The stars stretched endlessly before the UES Dauntless as it glided through the dark void of space. Captain James Walker stood at the bridge's main viewport, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. The ship's gentle hum was a comfort he had grown used to over his 15 years of deep space service. At 45, he was one of the youngest captains in Earth's exploration fleet, but his experience spoke for itself. "Captain, all systems are running smoothly," said Tom Reed, the ship's engineer. He was a short man with careful hands and a mind that could solve any mechanical puzzle. "The new drive core is performing better than expected." Walker nodded, a small smile crossing his face. The Dauntless was Earth's pride, their most advanced exploration vessel. Its sleek design and powerful engines made it perfect for pushing the boundaries of known space. 300 crew members called it home, each chosen for their skills and determination. "How far are we from the last map region?" Walker asked, turning to face Mary White, his navigation officer. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls, bringing up a detailed star chart. "We're about to cross the border, sir. Another 30 minutes, and we'll be in completely uncharted space." There was excitement in her voice. This was why they had joined Space Command, to see what lay beyond the known. The mission was supposed to be routine: push past the Orion Arm, map new star systems, and look for potential colony sites. Humanity needed room to grow, and the vast emptiness of space called to them. Earth's population had reached 11 billion, and despite the terraforming of Mars and Venus, more space was needed. Walker walked to his command chair, settling into its familiar embrace. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, each focused on their tasks. Outside, the stars seemed to blur as the Dauntless cut through space at speeds that would have seemed impossible just a century ago. "Sir, I'm picking up something unusual," said Bill Peters from the sensor station. His forehead wrinkled in concentration as he studied the readings. "There's a disturbance ahead. It's like nothing I've seen before." Walker leaned forward. "Can you put it on the main screen?" The large display at the front of the bridge came to life, showing what looked like a ripple in space itself. It was as if someone had dropped a stone into a cosmic pond, creating waves in the fabric of reality. "Analysis?" Walker asked, his voice steady despite the unease growing in his gut. "Energy readings are off the charts, sir," Peters replied. "It's not natural, whatever it is. The pattern is too regular." Before Walker could respond, the ship's warning systems blazed to life. Red emergency lights bathed the bridge in an eerie glow as alarms blared throughout the vessel. "Multiple unknown objects emerging from the disturbance," shouted Peters. "They're moving fast, faster than anything we've ever tracked." Walker's training kicked in. Shields up, all hands to battle stations. The crew responded instantly, their movements precise and practiced. "Communications, send a warning back to Earth Command. Include all our sensor data." But it was already too late. The strange objects, sleek, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, surrounded the Dauntless in seconds. The ship's advanced sensors couldn't get a proper lock on them. They seemed to shift and change even as the crew watched. "They're scanning us," Reed reported, his voice tense. "Our shields aren't blocking it. Whatever technology they're using, it's way beyond ours." Walker opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, prepare for possible hostile contact. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." The first hit came without warning. There was no visible weapon fire, no energy beam, just a sudden violent shudder that ran through the entire ship. The lights flickered, and several consoles arced. "We've lost main power," Reed shouted over the chaos. Switching to backup systems, Walker gripped his chair as another impact rocked the ship. "Return fire. All batteries, target the nearest vessel." The Dauntless's weapons came to life, sending streams of plasma toward the alien ships. But the shots passed through them, as if they weren't there at all. "Holograms," White whispered, but her question was answered when another hit shook the ship, this one harder than before. Hull breach on decks 3 through 5. Someone called out. Emergency bulkheads responding. Walker knew they were outmatched. These weren't just aliens. They were something far beyond humanity's current understanding. Engineering, can we jump to FTL? Drive's not responding, sir. Whatever they hit us with, it's affected all our main systems. Through the viewport, Walker watched as one of the alien vessels moved closer. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Dauntless, its surface covered in patterns that hurt the eyes to look at directly. Sir, Peters said, his voice barely a whisper, they're broadcasting something. It's in English. The bridge speakers crackled to life with a voice that sounded wrong. As if multiple people were speaking at once, their words slightly out of sync. Specimen catalog. Species 2731. Designation: human. Status: suitable for collection. Commencing acquisition. A strange light began to fill the bridge, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Walker tried to give orders, but his voice wouldn't work. His limbs felt heavy, and his vision began to blur. Around him, he could see his crew members slumping at their stations, falling into what looked like sleep. His last conscious thought was of Earth and a desperate hope that their warning message had gotten through. Then darkness took him, and the UES Dauntless, pride of humanity's fleet, vanished from known space along with its entire crew. Back on Earth, the first signs that something had gone wrong came 3 days later, when the Dauntless missed its scheduled check-in. Search parties were organized, probes were sent out, and emergency beacons were activated, but no trace of the ship or its crew was ever found. All that remained was a strange energy signature at their last known coordinates, a signature that defied analysis by Earth's best scientists. In the years that followed, the disappearance of the Dauntless became one of space exploration's greatest mysteries. Theories ranged from equipment failure to cosmic anomalies, but none could explain the complete absence of debris or distress signals. Memorials were built, families mourned, and gradually, the incident became a cautionary tale told to new Space Command recruits. But somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, the Dauntless and its crew were far from dead. They were about to begin an ordeal that would test the very limits of human endurance, and, in doing so, set in motion events that would change the galaxy forever. The early morning calm at Earth's Defense Command was shattered by blaring alarms. Admiral Robert Thompson rushed to the control room, coffee still in hand. 20 years had passed since the Dauntless vanished, and he'd been just a junior officer then. Now his gray hair and lined face showed the weight of command. "Report," he barked, looking at the massive screen that covered the wall. "Sir," long-range sensors picked up an unknown vessel approaching from Sector 7, said Lisa Cooper, the lid sensor operator. Her fingers flew across the controls as she brought up more detailed scans. "It's big, about destroyer class, but the energy signature. Sir, you need to see this." Thompson leaned forward, his coffee forgotten. The readings made no sense. The ship was putting out enough power to run a small city, but it wasn't like anything in their database. The hull was made of materials their sensors couldn't even identify. "How long until it reaches our defense perimeter?" he asked. "At current speed, 3 hours. But sir, there's something else." Cooper's voice wavered. "Some of these readings, they match old records from the Dauntless. Not exactly, but close enough that it can't be coincidence." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the story of the Dauntless. It was required reading at the Academy. Its disappearance had led to major changes in deep space exploration protocols. "Get me a visual," Thompson ordered. The main screen shifted, showing a grainy image that gradually cleared as their sensors focused. What they saw made several officers gasp. It was the Dauntless, but not as anyone remembered it. The once sleek exploration vessel now looked like a predator. Its hull was darker, covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift in the starlight. Alien technology had been grafted onto it, changing its shape into something both familiar and terrifying. Battle scars marked its surface, telling stories of conflicts they could only imagine. "Sir, it's not responding to any of our hails," reported Mike Jackson from communications. "We've tried all standard frequencies and even some of the old ones from 20 years ago." Thompson grabbed the nearest comm unit. "This is Admiral Robert Thompson of Earth Defense Command to approaching vessel. If you can hear me, you are entering restricted space. Identify yourself immediately." The silence stretched for almost a minute. Then, suddenly, every screen in the control room flickered. A face appeared, aged, scared, but immediately recognizable to anyone who'd seen the memorial photos. "This is Captain James Walker of the UES Dauntless, requesting emergency clearance to enter Earth space." His voice was deeper than in the old recordings, rougher, like he'd spent years shouting. "Authentication code Walker 79 Delta Echo 3. Thompson's hands shook slightly. That code was 20 years old, but it had been Walker's. "Captain Walker, you've been officially dead for 2 decades. A harsh laugh came through the speakers. "Death would have been kinder, Admiral. My crew and I, we've been through hell. And we've brought back a warning." "Your crew," Thompson started, but Walker cut him off. 283 survivors out of the original 300. The others. He paused, pain flashing across his face. "We'll explain everything, but we need to land. And Admiral, you'll want to get your best scientists ready. The technology we've brought back could save humanity, or doom it if we don't act fast enough." Thompson looked at his senior staff. They all knew the protocols for situations like this. Unknown vessels were to be quarantined, crews detained and questioned. But this was the Dauntless. This was Walker. "Captain, we're sending you coordinates for a secure landing facility. But I have to warn you, we'll have security teams standing by." "Wouldn't expect anything less, Admiral." Walker's scarred face showed a hint of his old smile. "We remember our protocols. Just be prepared. What you're about to see and hear will change everything you think you know about our place in the galaxy." As the Dauntless approached Earth, more details became visible. The ship's hull wasn't just scared. It was covered in what looked like armor plating of an unknown type. Weapons systems unlike anything Earth had developed were integrated into its structure. But most disturbing were the marks, deep gouges and burns that spoke of terrible battles. The landing was perfect, showing that despite its modifications, someone who knew Earth ships was still at the controls. As the dust settled at the secure facility, Thompson watched through reinforced windows as the ship's main hatch began to open. The crew that emerged looked both familiar and alien. Their uniforms were wrong, a mix of Earth design and strange materials. Many had visible cybernetic modifications, and all moved with the careful precision of people who had lived too long in danger. Walker came out last. In person, he looked even older than in the transmission. A long scar ran down the left side of his face, and his right arm was clearly artificial. But his eyes were sharp, alert, taking in everything around him. "Admiral," he said, stepping forward to meet Thompson. His handshake was firm, the metal fingers of his right hand carefully controlled. "Thank you for not shooting us down. I know how this must look." "Like something out of a nightmare," Thompson admitted. "What happened out there, James?" Walker looked back at his crew, who were submitting to medical scans with resigned patience. "We were taken, studied, modified. The beings that captured us, they call themselves the Collectors. They see other species as specimens to be cataloged and examined. We were just their latest acquisition." "How did you escape?" A dark smile crossed Walker's face. "Very carefully, over a very long time. We learned their technology, piece by piece. Adapted it. When they thought we were broken, we were actually getting stronger. The modifications you see." He gestured to his arm. "We did many of them ourselves, using their own tech against them." Thompson noticed that despite their obvious fatigue, Walker's crew maintained perfect formation, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. These weren't the explorers who'd left Earth 20 years ago. They were warriors now. "The ship?" Thompson asked. "We stole it back, rebuilt it using everything we'd learned. Every scar on her hull is a lesson we paid for in blood." Walker's voice hardened. "But Admiral, we didn't come back just to tell you our story. We came to warn you. The collectors. Earth is on their list. They're coming. And if we don't prepare, what happened to us will happen to everyone." As if to emphasize his point, a soft hum began emanating from the Dauntless. Its alien modifications seemed to pulse with inner light, a testament to the advanced technology now integrated into its systems. "How long do we have?" Thompson asked, dreading the answer. "Not long enough," Walker replied. "But we didn't just bring a warning. We brought weapons, knowledge, a fighting chance." He looked up at the sky, his expression grim. "The collectors thought they were studying us. Instead, they taught us how to destroy them. And now it's time to put those lessons to use." The debriefing room was packed with Earth's highest-ranking military officials and scientists. Walker stood at the front, his cybernetic arm gleaming under the harsh lights. The room had been silent for several minutes after he finished showing them the recordings of their captivity. "They kept us in clear cells," Walker continued, his voice steady but filled with old pain. "Like animals in a zoo, the collectors would watch us, take notes, and then—" He paused, taking a deep breath. "Then the tests would begin." Tom Reed, the ship's engineer, stepped forward. The right side of his face was now covered in a metallic plate that pulsed with soft blue light. "They were especially interested in how we solved problems. They'd create challenges, puzzles, deadly situations. Those who solved them got rewards. Those who failed—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. 17 of our crew died in those tests," Walker said. "We buried them in space after we escaped. They deserved better." Dr. Emily Carter, Earth's leading xenobiologist, raised her hand. "These modifications to your bodies, they're far beyond anything we've developed. How did you get them?" Mary White, the former navigation officer, laughed softly. Her eyes now glowed with an inner light, allowing her to see energy patterns normal humans couldn't. "We learned. Every time they cut into us, we studied their tools. Every time they enhanced one of us, we memorized the process. The collectors thought they were experimenting on us, but we were learning from them." Walker nodded to Bill Peters, who now had neural implants visible along his temples. Peters activated a holographic display showing detailed schematics of collector technology. Their biggest mistake was assuming we were just specimens. They didn't realize that every piece of data they fed into our cells' display screens, we were absorbing and understanding. The room erupted with questions, but Admiral Thompson raised his hand for silence. "Tell them about the other species, James." Walker's face darkened. "We weren't alone in that facility. The collectors had specimens from at least 30 different civilizations. Most were broken, empty shells. The collectors would study them until they had learned everything they could. Then," he clenched his fists, "they would dispose of them and move on to the next species. But humans were different," Reed added. "We adapted. We worked together. While other species gave up hope, we planned. The collectors saw our modifications as signs of successful experiments. They didn't realize we were building ourselves into weapons." White pulled up another hologram, showing the layout of the collector facility where they had been held. "It took us 15 years to gather enough information and modify ourselves sufficiently. Another 3 years to plan the escape. The final 2 years were spent executing that plan, piece by piece, so slowly that they never noticed. The day we took back the Dauntless," Walker continued, "was the day they finally understood their mistake. We had turned their own technology against them. The ship you see now, it's not just modified, it's evolved. We used their biomechanical integration systems to let the Dauntless grow and adapt, just like we did." Peters brought up sensor readings of the current Dauntless. The hull is made of self-repairing alloys. The weapons systems can adapt to any defense they encounter. And the AI core. He smiled grimly. Well, let's just say it's learned as much about survival as we have. Dr. Carter leaned forward. And you're certain they'll come to Earth? They're already on their way, Walker said quietly. The collectors work on a precise schedule. They study a species, gather their data, and then return with a harvest fleet to collect the entire population for their main facility. He looked around the room. We found their timetable. Earth is next on their list. The room erupted again, this time in panic. Admiral Thompson had to shout for order. When quiet returned, Walker continued. But we have advantages no other species had. We know their weaknesses. We've studied their technology from the inside. And most importantly, he gestured to his crew. We know how to fight them. Reed activated another display, showing the modifications they'd made to the Dauntless. Every scar on our ship, every implant in our bodies, is a piece of their own technology turned against them. We spent 20 years learning how to destroy them. Now we just need to teach you. How long do we have? Thompson asked. 3 months, Walker replied. Their harvest fleet moves slowly, gathering resources along the way. We can use that time to prepare Earth's defenses. He turned to address the whole room. Everything we know, everything we've learned, it's yours. But you have to understand something. This isn't just about survival. This is about showing the collectors that humanity isn't just another specimen in their collection. White pulled up one final hologram, a massive structure floating in deep space. This is their main facility. The place they took us. The place where they've ended countless civilizations. When they come for Earth, they'll expect to find easy prey. Instead, they're going to find an enemy they created themselves. The room was silent as the implications sank in. These weren't just returned survivors. They were the advance guard of a war humanity didn't even know it was about to fight. We'll need everything you can give us, Thompson said finally. Every piece of information, every bit of technology. Walker nodded to his crew, and they began distributing data devices. It's all here. But remember, knowledge isn't enough. You need to understand what we learned the hard way. The only way to beat the collectors is to be more adaptable, more determined, and more ruthless than they are. As the briefing ended and people began to file out, Dr. Carter approached Walker. Captain, she said softly, what you and your crew went through, I can't imagine. Walker's cybernetic arm whirred quietly as he turned to her. No, you can't. And if we do our job right, you'll never have to. Earth isn't going to become another specimen in their collection. We're going to be the species that ends their harvests forever. Outside the briefing room, the modified Dauntless loomed in the darkness, its alien additions glowing softly. It was no longer just a ship. It was a testament to human resilience and a promise of retribution. The collectors had spent 20 years turning their captives into something new, never realizing they were creating their own destruction. Now, as Earth prepared for war, that transformation would prove to be their greatest mistake. The warning lights flashed across the Dauntless's bridge as Walker studied the long-range scanner readings. 2 months had passed since their return to Earth, and the changes they'd helped implement were impressive. But time was running out. They're earlier than we expected, Reed said, his cybernetic implants pulsing with nervous energy. The harvest fleet just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Walker watched the dots appear on the main screen. 50 massive ships, each one bigger than anything humanity had ever built before the Dauntless returned. They moved in perfect formation, their black hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Send the alert, Walker ordered. It's time to see if Earth's fleet is ready. Around the solar system, alarms began to sound. The defense network Walker's crew had helped create came to life. Hidden bases on Mars and Jupiter's moons powered up their new weapons. The orbital platforms around Earth, rebuilt with collector technology, charged their main guns. Admiral Thompson's face appeared on the main screen. All ships report ready, Captain. Your modifications to our fleet are holding stable. Are you sure about this plan? Walker looked at his crew. 20 years of captivity had changed them all, but it had also made them into something the collectors never expected, a family forged in pain and determination. The collectors expect specimens, Admiral. Let's show them what happens when the specimens fight back. The Earth fleet moved into position. 300 ships, each one modified with technology and knowledge from the Dauntless. They weren't as powerful as the collector vessels, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to be smarter. First wave approaching, White reported, her glowing eyes tracking energy patterns across space. They're charging their stasis beams, the same type they used on us 20 years ago. Walker smiled grimly. Activate the countermeasures. Across the Earth fleet, the modifications they'd made began to pulse with blue light. The same technology that had kept them alive in the collector's cells now protected their ships from being frozen in time. The first collector beam struck an Earth vessel and passed right through it. For a moment, there was silence across all channels. Then Walker's voice rang out. All ships, attack pattern Delta. Show them what we learned. The battle erupted across the solar system. Earth ships darted between the massive collector vessels, their weapons finding weak points that only former captives would know about. The collector's impenetrable armor meant nothing to guns designed with intimate knowledge of their technology. They're trying to adapt, Peters called out, his neural implants processing battle data faster than any normal human could. But they can't understand how we know so much about their systems. Walker watched as the first collector ship exploded, its black hull cracking open like an egg. 20 years, he said quietly. 20 years they studied us, thinking we were just specimens. They never realized we were studying them right back. The Dauntless led the charge, its modified hull absorbing hits that would have vaporized it in its original form. Every scar it had earned during their escape had taught them something about collector weaknesses. Now those lessons were being put to use. Their formation is breaking, White reported. They're sending a transmission. The bridge speakers crackled to life with that same multi-layered voice they remembered from their capture. Specimen behavior unprecedented. Collection protocol failure. Requesting directive from central authority. Walker leaned forward. Send them our response. Reed transmitted the message they'd prepared. A detailed breakdown of every weakness they'd discovered, every flaw in collector technology, and every reason why humanity would never be just another specimen. He sent it in the collector's own language, using their own codes. The effect was immediate. The Harvest fleet's perfect formation dissolved into chaos. For the first time in their ancient history, the collectors faced a species that understood them better than they understood themselves. They're retreating, Peters announced, but Walker shook his head. Not yet. Admiral, signal the second phase. Don't let them mourn their central facility. Thompson's acknowledgement was quick. From behind Jupiter, a second Earth fleet appeared, ships that had been hidden using collector cloaking technology. They cut off the Harvest fleet's escape route, trapping them in the solar system. Remember what they did to us, Walker said to his crew. Remember the others we saw in those cells. The species that didn't make it. This isn't just about Earth anymore. The battle that followed would be studied for generations. Earth ships, led by the scared and modified Dauntless, systematically took apart the most powerful Harvest fleet the collectors had ever sent. Each shot was aimed with the precision of those who had intimate knowledge of their enemy's weaknesses. Each maneuver was designed to exploit flaws that only former specimens would know about. When the last collector ship went dark, floating dead in space, Walker finally allowed himself to relax slightly. Damage report. 12 Earth ships lost, Reed reported, his voice heavy but proud. But we destroyed their entire Harvest fleet. And more importantly, he looked up with his one remaining human eye. We proved they can be beaten. Walker nodded, looking at the debris field that had once been humanity's greatest threat. Send word to Earth. Tell them this was just the beginning. The collectors will send more ships when they realize what happened here. We need to be ready." White turned from her station, her glowing eyes intense. They turned us into weapons to use against other species. Instead, we became weapons against them. "No," Walker corrected her gently. "We became something much more dangerous than weapons. We became teachers." He looked around at his modified crew, at his transformed ship. "Everything we learned, everything we suffered. It all led to this moment. And now we take the fight to them." Reed finished. "To their central facility." Walker smiled, and for a moment, his crew could see the captain they'd known 20 years ago, before the collectors changed them all. "Send the signal to Earth Command. Tell them to prepare the fleet. The specimens are done being studied. It's time for humanity to do some collecting of our own." The massive collector facility hung in space like a dark star, its surface covered in countless chambers where specimens from across the galaxy were kept. Walker stood at the Dauntless's viewport, memories of his time in those cells flooding back. Behind him, the combined Earth fleet waited in formation. 500 ships, all modified with the knowledge his crew had brought back. "Last chance to reconsider, Captain," Admiral Thompson said through the comm. "We could fortify Earth instead, prepare for their next attack." Walker touched the scar on his face, remembering the day he got it trying to protect a younger crew member during one of the collector's tests. "No. As long as this facility exists, they'll keep harvesting species. We end it today." The attack plan was simple but dangerous. While the main fleet engaged the facility's defenses, the Dauntless would use its intimate knowledge of collector systems to slip inside. Walker and his crew would then fight their way to the central control room and upload a virus they'd spent months creating. A virus built from their own modified cybernetics. "All hands, battle stations," Walker ordered. His crew moved with practiced efficiency, their cybernetic enhancements humming with energy. They'd waited 20 years for this moment. The battle began with a massive barrage from Earth's fleet. The facility's outer defenses lit up, returning fire with weapons that could tear ships apart. But humanity's vessels were no longer easy prey. They carried shields reverse-engineered from collector technology. "Primary defenses engaged," White reported, her glowing eyes tracking energy patterns. "They're responding exactly as we predicted. They can't imagine that mere specimens could be a real threat." The Dauntless slipped through the chaos of battle, using the very modifications the collectors had inspired to mask its approach. They found the access port exactly where they remembered it, the same one they'd escaped through years ago. "We have entry," Reed announced as the ship settled into a massive docking bay. "But they know we're here now." Walker nodded to his boarding team. 20 crew members, each one modified and trained for this exact mission. "Remember your training. Remember why we're here. And most importantly," he activated his cybernetic arms weapon systems. "Remember what they did to us." They fought their way through corridors they'd once been dragged down as specimens. Every turn, every security measure, every defense. They knew them all. The collectors had made them study this place for 20 years. Now that knowledge became their undoing. Peters used his neural implants to hack security systems as they advanced. White's enhanced vision spotted ambushes before they could be sprung. Reed's understanding of collector technology let them turn the facility's own systems against it. They passed holding cells filled with alien species, some they recognized from their time in captivity, others new acquisitions. Walker forced himself to focus on the mission. They couldn't save everyone today, but they could ensure no one else would ever be collected again. The central control room was vast, filled with biomechanical interfaces that pulsed with alien energy. The few collectors present turned to face them. Tall, spindly creatures with too many eyes and limbs that moved wrong. For the first time, Walker and his crew faced their tormentors as equals rather than specimens. "You have evolved beyond parameters," the nearest collector said in that multi-layered voice. "This development must be studied." "No more studies," Walker replied, raising his arm. "No more specimens. No more collections. He fired, and the battle for the control room began. The collectors were physically superior in every way, but Walker's crew had something they didn't understand: rage. 20 years of pain and humiliation fueled every shot, every move, every attack. The collectors had enhanced their bodies, but hadn't realized they were strengthening their determination as well. Reed reached the main console, his cybernetic implants interfacing with collector technology. The virus they'd created began uploading, a program built from the very modifications forced upon them, designed to turn the entire facility's systems against itself. "Virus at 20%, Reed called out as he defended his position. "They're trying to stop it, but they can't understand how we modify their own code." Through the massive windows, they could see the space battle raging. Earth's fleet was holding its own, proving that humanity was no longer the easy target the collectors had found 20 years ago. Each ship fought with knowledge bought in pain and suffering. 60%, Reed updated. The facility's lights began to flicker as the virus spread. "The containment systems are starting to fail." Walker opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, begin evacuation procedures. Get as many specimens to safety as you can. Priority on any species still alive in the containment cells." The collectors fought desperately now, finally understanding what their specimens had become. But it was too late. The virus reached 100%, and the facility began to tear itself apart from the inside. "Time to go," Walker ordered. His crew fought their way back to the Dauntless, helping surviving specimens from other species along the way. Behind them, the central control room dissolved into chaos as its own systems turned against it. The Dauntless pulled away from the dying facility, its holds filled with rescued aliens. Through the viewport, Walker watched as the place that had been his prison for 20 years began to implode. The collectors' own technology, twisted and modified by their former specimens, became the instrument of their destruction. "Multiple core breaches detected," White reported. "The chain reaction is spreading through all systems, just like we planned." The Earth fleet retreated to a safe distance, ships loaded with survivors from dozens of worlds. They watched as the massive facility collapsed in on itself, centuries of collector research and specimens vanishing in a final flash of light. In the silence that followed, Walker looked at his crew, at the modifications they'd turned from curse to blessing, at the strength they'd found in their darkest moments. "Send word to Earth," he said quietly. Tell them the specimens send their regards." Admiral Thompson's voice came through the comm. "All ships report success, Captain. We're detecting no other collector signals in the sector. What they built over centuries, we ended in a day." Walker nodded, looking at his reflection in the viewport, at the scars and changes that marked him and his crew. "Not a day, Admiral. 20 years. We just had to learn to be something more than specimens first." The journey back to Earth was quiet, filled with the work of helping the rescued species and beginning the long process of healing. The Dauntless led the fleet home, its scarred hull a testament to both suffering and triumph. Humanity had entered the galactic stage as specimens to be studied. They returned as liberators, having turned the tools of their tormentors into the means of their destruction. The collectors had wanted to learn about human nature. In the end, that knowledge had destroyed them. Walker stood on the bridge of his transformed ship, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. They were different now, changed in ways that could never be undone. But they had proven something that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity would never be just another specimen in someone else's collection. They had become something far more dangerous. They had become free.